Hey guys, it's Annie with Salttown Realty here with your Salttown Shakedown, where I talk about things that are going on in the real estate world that you might be interested to know about. Today we are going to talk about cue music, the lawsuit, the big lawsuits that have been going on. I'm sure you have read the salacious headlines, and I'm sure you have opinions on it about how you can get all your money back from your realtor. You don't have to pay realtors anymore. Today we are going to talk about what's actually happening. So let's go. Okay, before we talk about the lawsuit, we have to get on the same page about a couple things. The first thing I want to talk about is representation. So typically in a real estate transaction, a seller is going to be represented by a listing agent. That person has the seller's best interest in mind. They're trying to get them the most amount of money with the least amount of hassles in the shortest amount of time. That is their role in their job. So together, they typically have a listing agreement. We're going to get back to that in a second. On the other side of the transaction, there is a buyer's agent that is representing the best interest of the buyer. So if a buyer is looking at a house, that agent should be there for them to help guide them along that process. First, they're out showing them homes. They are going through the homes together. They are writing the offers. They are negotiating due diligence items with the listing agent. They've got a big job to do. In the state of Utah, on the buyer's side, we have a contract that's been in place for, I don't even know how long, for a really long time, that solidifies that relationship between the buyer and the buyer's agent. So it says, hey, we are working together. Technically, you are working with my brokerage, who I am a subsidiary of, but this is the agreement that we're working together. And in fact, it has on there a little line that talks about the commissions. On that line, it signifies this is what my rate is and this is what my commission is. What's crazy is I recently learned, because of all this lawsuit stuff, that 39 states in the United States don't have buyer-broker agreements. So that means as a buyer out there, you're working with a buyer's agent and there is no formal contract between the two of you about anything. It doesn't establish a relationship. It doesn't say how they're going to get paid, nothing at all. Salt Lake City, or in Utah, is really specific about that. And that, I think, is a 4-page document that goes over a myriad of things about how that relationship will pan out. So in Utah, on the agreement between the listing agent and the seller, there is also a contractual written agreement saying, I understand that I am actually working for your brokerage, working with your brokerage, and this is the commission that I plan to pay for my house. Now, commissions in Utah, and as far as I know in the other states, are not law. They're not written in stone. They're not anything. But it is typical for 6% to be the fee that the seller pays. Now, if that listing agent just shoves that paperwork on through DocuSign to their seller and goes, here, it's 6% to list your house, that seller might not know exactly, maybe they didn't read the fine print, maybe they didn't go through that contract, and they might not necessarily understand the details of that. And the devil is in the details, because what that contract actually signifies is that 6% will be paid to the brokerage of the listing agent. And from there, they are allowing, in that contract, the seller is allowing the listing agent to share that commission with an agent that brings them a buyer. And so typically, like on my contracts, it'll say that my fee is 3% for listing the home, and then 3% will be paid through my brokerage to an agent that brings a buyer. And this is where we have gone wrong in this country, is a lot of agents aren't explaining that specifically. So what happened is those sellers would get to the closing table, see their final documents, and go, why am I paying for this buyer's agent? And the listing agent will say, well, it was in the contract that you signed via DocuSign on your tiny little phone that you couldn't read. And the seller claimed to have no knowledge of that. And so that's a really big deal. That was a huge conversation that wasn't shared with that seller. And that's why these lawsuits are happening. Okay, so the next question is, what's going to change? So the first thing is, in Utah, we are pretty darn dialed on all of our paperwork, our agreements, everything is written out. At Keller Williams in particular, we've always been taught to go over the entire agreement. Anytime we're sending something to a client, we're going over it ad nauseum to make sure that they completely understand what they are looking at. A lot of other states aren't set up that way. Like I said, a lot of states don't even have buyer broker agreements. So I think in those states, and I don't know which ones they are specifically, but I think in those states, they are gonna like have a complete overhaul to what real estate looks like. For us, nothing really changes, but the one thing that does change is on our MLS. So in Utah Real Estate is our MLS. There will no longer be a posting of what the buyer agent commission is. The reason for this is because it is the seller's choice of how much they want to pay their listing agent and how much they want to pay an agent that brings them a buyer. So if that seller chooses that they want to pay 1.5% to a buyer's agent, and that's written on the MLS, there's a heck of a lot of agents that won't show that house because they're like, well, normally I make 3% and this guy's offering 1.5%, and so I'm not even going to show that house. So in order to make it fair for everybody, if they don't list the buyer's agent commission, then agents can't, not show a house because it's not offering the commission that they're looking for. Instead, what will happen is on the buyer side, we will be calling the listing agent and saying, is your seller going to be offering a buyer's agent commission? Now, as far as that goes, like should a seller offer a buyer's agent commission or shouldn't they? There's no right or wrong answer, honestly. But as a listing agent, we're in the business of selling that house. And in order to sell that house, we're going to be doing as many things as we can to increase the marketability of that house. So that's going to include cleaning the house and staging it and getting repairs done, advertising it on the right websites. For me, I make blog posts and put it on my social media, all kinds of stuff. If I know that it's going to help to sell that house to offer a buyer's agent commission, I'm going to continue to suggest to my sellers that that's what they do. If a buyer is coming to buy that house and they don't have the money to pay their buyer's agent, they're not going to be able to buy your house. So it's just another level of marketing is offering that commission. So will sellers stop doing that? I don't know. Some of them might, but I think if they see the value in offering that in order to bring more buyers to their property, they're going to continue to do that.